This is Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank on the voice of Indiana County, WCCS AM 1160 and 101.1 FM. Our interview segments, as always, presented by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Now, I could go into a little ditty about spring has sprung, but I don't think I will, because we definitely know spring is back. And with us this morning to talk all things of agricultural sense is Bob Pollock of the Indiana County Cooperative Extension. And Bob, it's good to see you. Good to hear from you again, actually.
Likewise. How are you today?
I'm doing all right, and we want to remind everybody. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, we wanted to remind everybody that we do have a phone line open at 724-479-1160 if you want to call in and ask Bob a question. We will definitely try to get that on the air for you as quickly as we can. So, if you have a question, give us a call, 724-479-1160. So, Bob, spring, finally. It seems like we've kind of been cooped up, and now it is time for everybody, I would imagine, probably all of the amateur gardeners out there, to think about getting ready for the spring planting season when it comes to flowers and maybe vegetable gardens out back of the home. So, what are some things that people should be thinking about?
Well, at this point in time, even the experienced gardeners are at it in planning and thinking and in starting to do things. Yeah, we're easing into spring, which is good. We're not speeding into it, so that's helpful. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves as we look ahead within the next week here. It appears that we're going to have some temperatures down in the low 20s for a couple of nights. So that's just a reminder that while we have a little bit of warm weather during the days, don't get too excited or too rambunctious, because we're going to have that checked maybe a little bit next week. It is still March. We have had, in past times, we've had 3 foot of snow or more, come down in the latter parts of March or even into April. But given the conditions we have, it's a good time to go out. There's things starting to peek up through the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Some of our spring bulbs have started to come up. Some even are starting to bloom, depending on the location. If they're in a good south-facing sunny location, those are up farther than the ones that are on the north side of a house or on the north side of a slope where we don't get as much light and the ground stays a little cooler. And those are things that you can just, as you're going around, and you can notice those things. Oh, well, why is that so far along and mine haven't even popped up out of the ground yet?
It's definitely... Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, there's things we can be... some of our perennial plants, we maybe left them over winter. And a few weeks ago, we were talking about bees, and Todd had asked where they spend their time over the winter. And a lot of our solitary bees and even other bees will overwinter. The adult queen will overwinter in the stems of plants. So those perennial plants, the black-eyed Susans, for example,
mm-hmm.
That have those dead stems standing there, they will bore down in those stems, and that's where they'll spend the winter.
Ah, okay.
So if we removed those last fall, we just removed the place for those bees to overwinter in. They'll probably find someplace else. Bumblebees will get in layers of leaves. So if we have beds where we leave those leaves, no pun intended, over the winter, those bees will get down in the layers of that, and that provides some insulation and cover for them to spend the winter. So again, if we remove all those in the fall and do a fall cleanup, then again we've removed a place for those insects to overwinter.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, we're starting to come out of that. So we may still want to leave some stubble there, may not want to trim them all the way back, but you can start up at the tops and remove some of that dead material.
Just be
You
careful.
might even go ahead.
Just be careful when you do. You might wake a queen bee or something like that. It sounds like.
That's right. Or, and you could still cut those off at the ground, but maybe not dispose of those sticks, because they may still be, if they are overwintering in there, they're probably not going to be all the way down at the ground level. So when you remove that dead material, you can get it out of there. But maybe you just take it then and put it back in the corner, or just put it in a place where that can, when they do come out and then start to make their new nest in the spring, then at that point you can take that, or you can put it back, on the compost pile.
Wow.
And that way, they can still complete their life cycle. And so it's a little different way of thinking of how we manage some of this stuff. For a long time, we maybe didn't even think about that. We weren't concerned about it. There was enough of those pollinators around, and we didn't give it a second thought.
But we've been hearing about bees going downhill population-wise, and people are still behind a movement to try to make sure that those populations are protected.
And we're learning more and more about how some of these species, their life cycle, where they habitat, and as we, in fence rows and property lines where over decades and hundreds of years you might have had a fence row there, and you had a mixture of trees and then with shrubs underneath it. Those places are pockets of places where a lot of these insects can go and be able to complete their life cycle.
Okay.
The other thing, other things, looking at some of your trees and shrubs, was there any damage that occurred over the winter?
Oh yeah, you're probably going to run into a lot of frost damage, because we did have a lot of cold days this winter. So I would imagine that's probably got to be treated right away.
Yeah, so anything that looks like it has dieback on it, those things can be touched up, prune off the dead stuff back to where you have live, undamaged wood. Things might have, you might have branches, too many branches, and they're rubbing together. So pick the best branch and take the other one out. And of course, we've got a lot of multi-stemmed shrubs. That's their habit. So forsythia, lilac are good examples. Forsythia, they're just starting to come out now.
Mm-hmm.
So typically we want to just let those alone for now, let them bloom, and then after they bloom is the best time of the year to prune those, because that's one of the high points of the year for those plants, is during the bloom period. Mm-hmm. And then after that they become just a green-leafed plant.
You're listening to Indiana in the Morning. We're talking with Bob Pollock of Indiana County Extension Office, and you still have an opportunity to call in at 724-479-1160. I know we had somebody trying to call in there just a little bit ago, so try again now. We'll see if we can get you on with Bob Pollock here. So, Bob, you said one of the things that people should keep in mind is it's still March. Things could happen. We are seeing some big temperature swings, though. I mean, we're seeing temperatures going into the low to mid 70s, and then swinging back down to the 50s. In fact, that's what we've got coming up in our forecast this week. Temperature fluctuations like that have to affect plants. So the timing of when you want to plant is key. Can you talk about some things that maybe within the next couple of weeks we might want to consider getting ready to plant?
Well, lawns, if you need to repair places in your lawn, any time now that the soil dries out enough that you can work the ground, loosen the soil up, take the dead turf out, smooth that up. You can get those spots reseeded now. It's not too early to do that, because you can get in, do it when the conditions are right, and then those seeds will germinate as the soil temperature warms and the conditions get better, but you've got it planted and it's ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to wait for that to happen.
All right.
And then, so that's something there. And then, with vegetable gardens, we're thinking about the cool season crops right now. So looking, when in April do you want to start to put some of those out or plant some of those plants? So then you can back up if you're planting seeds and starting seeds. We need at least 6 weeks of time, and sometimes, maybe 7 weeks or 8 weeks to get those plants to a point where they'll be ready to transplant out into the garden. So you need to look at, well, when do I want to get them in the ground, and then back up that amount of time, and that's when you should be seeding,
mm-hmm.
or at least start to seed. And I think we ought to think more about succession. Don't try to plant everything at one time. Start some plants and then put them out, and then wait till those seeds germinate, and then plant some more seeds to get them to germinate.
All right.
That way you can stagger things.
All right. So timing is everything. And you were talking about the cold weather vegetables. I'm assuming you're talking about like onions and things like that.
Yep.
All right. So
onions and peas and yep.
So we've had our onion snow. Then we can start thinking about it. That's good. Mom always was about onion snow whenever she was planting the vegetable garden. So there you go. We are out of time. Robert, thank you very much for joining us once again on Indiana in the Morning. I'm sure I'll get to talk to you in the future. Maybe we can talk more about planting tomatoes and peppers and lettuces and things like that. So thanks again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Pollock of the Indiana County Extension joining us here on Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank, here on the Voice of Indiana County, WCCS AM 1160 and 101.1.